This past weekend, the cities of Akron, Ohio and Chicago, Illinois played host to Pro Wrestling Eternal's debut double shot of shows. And not just did they get to be the first to witness the unique brand of Eternal Wrestling, they also got to see both the inaugural Eternal Heavyweight and Cruiserweight champions being crowned. I am your host 240, and welcome to our most recent installment of Pro Wrestling Eternal's Event Center. On Friday, January 24th, VFW Post 2108 was the place to be in Akron, Ohio, as nearly 200 fans of professional wrestling came to be a part of history in witnessing the debut show of Pro Wrestling Eternal. The show opened with the unveiling of the Eternal Cruiserweight Championship belt and a traditional tournament opening ceremony. Each of the 8 men competing made their way to the ring to be introduced to the crowd and for some group photos. This wouldn't have been noteworthy had it not been for what happened after the photos were taken. Robbie McNamara and Jason O'Connor took the lead in offering well wishes to all the competitors, starting a chain of pleasantries amongst the men in the ring. That was until O'Connor reached his hand towards the veteran Acid. Almost kicking off a brawl, Acid smacked O'Connor's hand down, refusing to play nice. McNamara got between O'Connor and the masked man, but Acid left the ring area before any other physicality could occur. You could feel the tension in the air as the ring emptied and the first match got underway. For the first ever match in Eternal history, you could not have asked for better. To kick off the night and the Eternal Cruiserweight Championship tournament, we had a beautiful clash of styles, with the lucha libre styling of the Mexican star Silver Tiger and the mat-based technical work of New York's Robbie McNamara. Both men played their parts well and stuck to their game plans throughout the bout. McNamara tried to get the legs out of under Tiger and grind him into the mat, while Silver Tiger meant to keep the pace high and ultimately disorient Robbie with stick-and-move arm drags and drop kicks. Neither man could keep the upper hand for long until the match neared the 10th minute. After a flurry of reversals from both men, Silver Tiger was able to catch McNamara with double underhooks, lifted him into the air, and landed the Silver Tiger driver for a definitive 3 count. Silver Tiger moved on to the next round. Competed with a much more traditional North American cruiserweight style, the cruiserweight tournament continued with the 35-year-old Keith Vegas taking on the 22-year-old Jules Knight. While it may have seemed as if Knight was taking the fight to Vegas the entire bout, it became clear as the match wore on that it was the veteran Vegas who was in the driver's seat the entire time. Playing the counterpuncher, Keith took the advantage of the youngster's inexperience and wore him down by forcing Knight to be the aggressor. The match came to a swift end as Knight made one too many mistakes and Keith capitalized with the Vegas or Bust Bulldog, ending Knight's night earlier than he had hoped. The first round of the Eternal Cruiserweight Championship tournament continued as Christopher Ball looked to put down the well-respected Acid to help cement his transition away from mixed martial arts, and nearly did so within seconds of the opening bell. Ball took the offensive immediately and hit Acid with a beautiful Superman punch, nearly securing the victory, but was only able to get a 2 count. Ball tried to keep the heat on the world-traveled superstar, but Acid slyly was able to get the upper hand due to some underhanded tactics. Ball tried to get back to that earlier momentum, but was never quite able to before Acid climbed the top rope and ended the match, courtesy of the Acid Rain Bomb. In the final match of the first round, both Jason O'Connor and the rookie Blue Dragon looked to get their Eternal careers off right with a victory and move on to take on Silver Tiger in the second round. It was clear from the very beginning of the match that Dragon just was not on the same level as O'Connor, but that does not mean that Jason had an easy path in the next round. Dragon fought tooth and nail to keep his head above water, but was outmatched at every turn. The match came to an end as O'Connor locked the masked youngster in the stretch plum and forced the submission victory. After a brief intermission, retired indie stalwart Lee Wright made his way to the ring with a microphone in hand. Lee took this time to thank the crowd for supporting Pro Wrestling Eternal's debut outing and announced that PWE would be returning to Akron in 4 short weeks on Friday, February 28th. Next, Lee invited 4 men that would be taking part in the Heavyweight Championship Tournament Showcase 8-man tag in the semi-main event of the evening. Greg Hennick, Gringo Starr, Jack Griffith, and Jason Patterson came to the ring and each had a moment to address the crowd. The standout moment of the segment came as Gringo cut a half-English, half-Spanish tirade that ended in threats to every man in the heavyweight tournament, his teammates for the evening included. To kick off the second round, Acid and Vegas, two of the more experienced participants in this tournament, went head-to-head. Just a few minutes into this match, it became very clear that Keith's rope-a-dope was not nearly as effective this time around. Acid was able to force Vegas out of his comfort zone and sent him reeling with a variety of offensive maneuvers. Taking this match in a more mat-based direction than the one earlier in the night, Acid worked from submission to submission until he was able to tap Vegas with the acidity test choke, moving into the finals. Before leaving the ring, Acid made a very clear statement to whoever his opponent would be as he gestured around his waist, followed by dragging his thumb across his throat. And to find his finals opponent, Jason O'Connor and Silver Tiger had an absolutely brutal 20-minute battle. Tiger had the upper hand for a fair majority of this contest as the more rested of the two, but O'Connor refused to be put down. Tiger's acrobatics kept O'Connor off kilter until Jason was finally able to ground the Mexican star. O'Connor put Tiger through the ringer, transitioning between holds with a relative ease, until Silver was able to counter a hold into a stretch himself. The final flurry of action came as Tiger had the momentum on his side and was setting up the Silver Tiger driver, but was thwarted and ended up tapping to the stretch plum within moments. Silver Tiger was more than a little upset as he stormed from ringside, but it didn't matter to O'Connor, who was looking towards the main event and the Cruiserweight Championship in his near future. Lee Wright made his return to the ring, this time to give the second half of the Heavyweight Championship Tournament Showcase 8-man tag match their time. Introducing Charlie Corner, Colossus, Denny King, and both Wolfie and Calder of the Hot Tags to the ring. Wright gave each man time to speak their truth. Tiring of hearing Calder's rant about tag team supremacy and how this moment is the moment of the genesis of... Colossus shoved him aside and took the microphone from Wright's hand and began cutting every man, woman, and child in the VFW post down. Colossus made it very clear he was there to do one thing, and that was to destroy all in front of him. This must have struck a nerve with Gringo Starr, who sprinted from the backstage area alone and took the fight directly to Colossus. This prompted the other men in the 8-man to make their way to the ring and get the fight started. It took more than a few minutes and as many Eternal staff as was available to get these men into something resembling an actual wrestling match, but even after it was, the wrestling was just as hard-hitting. Powerful slams and bruising blows peppered the match as each man brought the fight to whoever was in front of him. A scary moment came as Greg Hennig and Calder Tag were going at it, and Tag took a Hennig German suplex that caused him to bounce off the ropes and land directly on his shoulder. It became obvious very soon that Calder had gotten injured as he favored the shoulder for the rest of the match. The end, however, came as Colossus cleared the ring and was left with the rookie Patterson. Jason gave his all, but was simply overpowered by the behemoth Colossus. One damnation drop later, and it was Colossus and his team who stood tall, ready for Chicago. And we finally made it to the main event of Night 1 of the Eternal Championship Double Shot Weekend. Jason O'Connor going one-on-one with Acid, with the Eternal Cruiserweight Championship on the line. A very interesting matchup as many years prior, as Jason was taking his first steps in the wrestling business, it was Acid who offered the young man advice and helped mold O'Connor into the wrestler he is today. It became very clear that these men knew each other very well, as the early parts of the match played like a mirror match, as Jason countered, then played back every move Acid made. It was not until Acid began taking cheap shots that he was able to take the offensive completely. O'Connor took a hellacious beating from the World Traveler, but was able to turn the tide with some well-placed strikes and some quick grappling that disoriented his opponent. O'Connor looked to be on the verge of victory when his recent past came back to haunt him. Acid, able to escape O'Connor momentarily, rolled out of the ring and forced O'Connor to chase him ringside. Acid took advantage and was able to take O'Connor out by the knees by shoving the ring steps into him and returning to the ring. Taking this time to distract the referee, Silver Tiger sprinted down to the ringside area and hit the Silver Tiger driver on O'Connor on the outside of the ring before rolling the unresponsive Jason back into the ring. Just a few moments later, an acid rain bomb and a definitive 3 count. The first ever Eternal Cruiserweight Champion had just been crowned. After the match, Acid and Silver Tiger weren't done with the down Jason and began to put the boots to him. As Acid began whipping O'Connor with the Cruiserweight belt, Robbie McNamara attempted to make the save of his tag team partner, but was unable to turn the tide. The show came to a close with a triumphant masked duo standing tall. And with that, Eternal Championship Double Shot Night 1 is in the books. But before we get to Night 2 in Chicago, Illinois, we here at the Event Center want to take a more in-depth look into the careers of the wrestlers of Eternal, so you can get to know these athletes just a bit better. And what better way to kick off the debut of Eternal Exhibit than by showcasing the newly crowned Eternal Cruiserweight Champion, Acid. Debuting in 2001, it didn't take long for Acid's blend of technical brilliance and aerial elegance to make waves as part of the Canadian independent scene. Those waves brought Acid to the shores of the hardcore haven that was Danger and Violence Extreme, debuting with them in the summer of 2004. Over his 3 years with Dave, Acid had standout matches with the likes of Jack Guidroy, Art Reed, Alex Braun, Pablo Rodriguez, Sammy Bach, and the late Sean Gonzalez. Staying until the death of Dave in spring of 2007, Acid took an opportunity with growing wrestling promotion World Level Wrestling. Acid had an uncharacteristically slow start in WLW, not finding his groove until he began teaming with UK Dragon, forming the Acid Dragon tag team and winning their first world-level tag team titles in July of 2008. The Acid Dragon team eventually spawned the scourge of WLW for many years, the 505 Stable. Led by both Acid and Dragon, the stable was a revolving door of foreign workers wreaking havoc across world level, constantly a thorn in the side of the faces of WLW. The Acid Dragon team continued having success in the tag team ranks, claiming 4 total reigns as world level tag team champions, while feuding with the biggest names in world level, such as Unity 2 of Kojima and Ishibashi, Black House of Naruto and Maita, and Infamy Inc. of Kurata and Amagawa. With UK Dragon's retirement and world level's financial issues, Acid returned home and is now looking to have a successful final chapter as Eternal Cruiserweight Champion. To leave you with an interesting fact about the wrestler being exhibited today, as charismatic as Acid clearly is, he has never, in his nearing 20-year career, uttered a single word on camera. And with that, the Eternal exhibit comes to a close, and we turn our attention back to Night 2 of the Eternal Championship Double Shot Weekend. The Morris Community Center in Chicago, Illinois, hosted another near 200 fans on the 25th of January. Night 2 opened the same way that Night 1 did, with the unveiling of the Eternal Heavyweight Championship belt and each man in the Heavyweight Championship tournament being introduced. The one change that was announced was due to receiving a shoulder injury the day before in Akron, Calder Tag would be unable to compete and the first alternate would take his place. Luckily, the alternate was none other than his tag team partner and more notably, his brother Wolfie Tag. Prior to the group picture, Wolfie and Calder took verbal shots at Greg Hennig for purposefully taking liberties with the youngster, but Hennig repeatedly offered his apologies saying he did not mean to injure anyone. The rest of the segment went fairly uneventful before giving way to the first match of the first round. The two men tasked with kicking off the Heavyweight Championship tournament was Southern Justice Jack Griffith and the relative newcomer Wolfie Tag. The bout was quick and nothing more than a flurry of punches, occasionally interrupted with a power slam or suplex. You could tell that Jack may have lost the finesse in his work, and Wolfie hadn't quite learned it himself, as it was bare bones and as straightforward as you could be. The match thankfully came to a conclusion as Griffith smashed Wolfie with the Jack in the Box leaping lariat and got the pinfall victory, moving to the second round. While making his way to the ring for his first round bout, the man known as California Cool Charlie Corner took the opportunity to make his mind known. Telling the crowd that he hadn't been given enough time to talk the night before in Akron, Corner promised that he wouldn't be silenced until he got everything out that he needed to. He began by running down the state of Illinois, but said that the rest of the state looked nearly as good as California when compared to the city of Chicago. Before he could continue, his opponent Greg Hennig made his way out and defended the honor of the locals. The verbal spat turned physical when Corner, upset that he wasn't able to speak uninterrupted, tried to blindside Hennig as he entered the ring. Hennig was able to turn the tables and knock Corner to his rear as the ref began the match. The match was a bit more up-tempo than the opener as both Hennig and Corner brought the fight to each other with a much more varied offense. Working technique between the shows of strength, both men took turns in the driver's seat and every time Charlie would take the lead, he couldn't help but jaw-jack with the crowd. Every time he did, however, it always led to Hennig getting the upper hand again. The final sequence of this 15-minute battle came as Corner went for the explosive corner cutter, but Hennig had it scouted and shoved Charlie away. Corner landed on his feet, back to his opponent, who took the opportunity to show off some amazing athleticism and leapt over the shoulders of the 6'6" Corner and drove his face into the ground with the raindrop face crusher to get the 1-2-3. The next match, whose winner got to take on Southern Justice in the second round, was next, as Denny King and Jason Patterson faced off. King took the early advantage and never gave it up. Patterson, to his credit, was never say die, as King could just not put the thunderbolt down. As the minutes ticked on, you could tell that King became more and more frustrated with the young'un as his attacks became more and more ferocious. But the more crazed King became, the more resilient Patterson seemed to become. Seemingly unable to put Patterson down for good, King became desperate, and in the 15th minute, drugged Jason to the top rope and flung him ass over tea kettle to the canvas below, with a tremendous superplex for the victory. The final match of the first round seemed to start as soon as the previous match came to an end, as Colossus and Gringo Starr came pouring out of the curtain to the ringside area before Patterson was even able to get out of the ring. After a few minutes of throwing each other through the chairs in the crowd, followed by walk and brawl, the two men somehow ended up in the ring so the ref could start the match. Let me be clear. This was a wrestling match in name only, as neither man attempted a single hold, as they were more than happy to keep slugging each other in the mouth. To Gringo's credit, the near foot height and 50-pound weight advantage Colossus held over him didn't slow him down one bit, until the final moments of the 6-minute slugfest, when Colossus grabbed Gringo by the throat and slammed him to the ground with a damnation drop to pick up the quick victory, putting an emphatic end to the first round of the Eternal Heavyweight Championship Tournament. After a brief intermission, the crowd was greeted by a new face. Introducing himself as Johnny Heights, he announced that he had been selected as the first alternate for the Cruiserweight tournament the night prior in Akron, but unluckily for him, his number had not been called. While obviously okay with not earning his first match with Eternal due to the misfortune of others, Johnny felt after watching those who were selected for the tournament over him that he wasn't going to wait for an opportunity, that he was going to create an opportunity for himself. Johnny put out an open challenge to any man who had been in the tournament the night before to face Heights right then. After a moment where it seemed like he wasn't going to get his match, it was answered by the masked Blue Dragon. Dragon took no time to show Heights his ability as he leapt into the ring over the top rope and immediately hit a head scissors, getting the match started. A welcome change of pace from the sometimes plotting heavyweights, Heights and Dragon brought the average match pacing up a few notches as they held nothing back. A brief but exciting match showed the athleticism of both men who flew around the ring with reckless abandon. Heights was able to show that he may have been right in his complaints as he put Dragon away in just over 8 minutes, getting the pinfall victory as he landed a running double knee strike to Dragon's chest that Heights later told the event center he called the antidote. Starting the second round of the Eternal Heavyweight Championship Tournament, we had Southern Justice taking on the Wild Card. A mash of both men's earlier bouts, Griffith took the fight to King early, but his simplistic style of strikes and basic power moves were easily countered by King, who had turned the tide in his favor. Griffith continued to fight with every fiber of his being, but a second match in the night, with a possible third, seemed to be too much for the worn-down wrestler. Eager to end this match sooner rather than later so he can keep himself fresh for the main event, King pulled Griffith to the top turnbuckle and hit the superplex for the victory in a mere 6 minutes. For the final bout of the second round, we got to see Greg Hennig come face to chest with the largest man in the Eternal locker room. Hennig, used to being the smaller man, tried to keep with a stick-and-move offense, but Colossus, used to being the larger man, knew to smash the bug as soon as he could. Colossus kept the upper hand throughout the match, but as Hennig continued to squirm out of harm's way more often than not, Colossus became more and more frustrated. Although Colossus was able to hit the damnation drop, he did it a bit too close to the ropes, and Greg was able to roll out of the ring, sparing himself, but only momentarily. Colossus didn't take kindly to Greg not allowing him to end the match on his terms, so Colossus exited the ring himself and began tossing Hennig around the ringside area from guardrail to ring post to entrance ramp, before finally getting disqualified by the referee when Colossus slammed Hennig through some chairs in the crowd with a second damnation drop. The locker room cleared as the bell rang to try to stop Colossus's rampage, but the only thing that distracted him long enough to move on was Gringo Starr leaping over the sea of men trying to subdue the larger man. Starr and Colossus continued their brawl from earlier out of the Morris Community Center and into the darkness of the cold Chicago night. Trying to calm the crowd to allow Hennig to get the help he needed, Lee Wright made his way to the ring with a microphone in hand. After getting the attention and quieting the crowd, Lee took the opportunity to announce that Pro Wrestling Eternal would be returning to the Morris Community Center on Saturday, March 28th, and to keep an eye on the event center to find out about the featured matchups as they are announced. Before Wright could continue, he was joined in the ring by Robbie McNamara, who seemed to be a little worse for wear. McNamara asked for a moment of Lee's time and proceeded to call out the newly minted Cruiserweight champion, Acid. McNamara told Acid that he didn't want a title shot, he just wanted to get back at the man who put his friend on the shelf for the night. As McNamara continued his promo, the lights went out, and when they returned, Acid stood face to face with Robbie, seemingly accepting the challenge before going to blows with the Brooklynite, as Wright cleared the ring and the ref called for the bell. The match was an odd mix of technical masterclass and wild brawl, as both men looked to prove themselves the superior grappler, but also allowing emotion to take control from time to time. McNamara came with heavy shots early, but most were more meticulous than they initially seemed, as they weakened Acid to be more susceptible with the gritty submissions Robbie followed with. Acid took the shots like the champ he is, and returned with some underhanded tactics like adding a fish hook during a headlock or gouging Robbie's eyes. McNamara eventually sank to the level of the veteran and took advantage when the ref was preoccupied with some cheap shots. A grueling 20 minutes passed before Acid was able to land the Acid Rain bomb on a pro in McNamara and escape with the win. The main event of the evening came, and it initially seemed like it wasn't going to happen. Denny King made his way to the ring when Hennig's music played. There was no sign of the man. King spoke to the referee, demanding to be crowned the champion, as obviously Hennig was unable to continue after the beating he took from Colossus just minutes earlier. As he continued to harass the referee, Hennig's music played a second time, and a heavily bandaged Hennig limped to the ring. King initially seemed upset to see Hennig make his way to the ring, but was overjoyed to see the wrapped midsection of his opponent. King even held the ropes open for the hobbled Hennig, much to the frustration of the hurt Greg. The referee conferred with Hennig that he was sure he wanted to actually start this match, and Hennig just nodded his head. As soon as the bell rung, King charged with fire in his eyes and targeted the huge bullseye on the chest of Hennig. Punches, forearms, elbows, and shoulder strikes surrounded Hennig, causing the injured man to call out in pain with every landed blow. King, like a shark in a frenzy, never eased up and continued the flurry before suplexing Hennig around the ring. But when a lesser man would have allowed himself to take the loss, Greg stood back up and took more of a pounding. King, ready to put the heavyweight championship around his waist, began looking for the superplex to end the match in short order. Finally getting Hennig to the top turnbuckle, King's luck turned. Hennig was able to shove Denny from the top rope to the canvas. As King staggered to his feet, Hennig took the opportunity to hit a raindrop from the top rope. Greg was able to eventually climb to his down opponent and drape himself across the shoulders of King to get the 1-2-3 and the eternal heavyweight championship. Hennig was able to succeed against all odds and capture the eternal heavyweight championship. The show came to a close as Hennig celebrated his victory with the few fans who were left. 2 great nights, 2 tremendous shows, and 2 new Eternal Champions crowned. To say that the debut Double Shot weekend was a success for Pro Wrestling Eternal would be an incredible understatement. But this is just the beginning. Pro Wrestling Eternal's history is bright with the phenomenal talent that we have acquired. And now, let's take a look at the matches already announced for our return show. On Friday, February 28th, we return to the VFW Post 2108 in beautiful Akron, Ohio, with our show now titled Eternal Pride and Glory. Continuing his quest to prove himself to be more than just an alternate, Johnny Heights has issued another open challenge to the wrestlers who took part in the Cruiserweight tournament. This time, his challenge had been accepted by submission specialist The Sandman, Jules Knight. To see who will be named the number 1 contender for the Eternal Heavyweight Championship, Colossus will take on Gringo Star in a no disqualification Falls Count Anywhere match. The winner of that match will take on Greg Hennig in the main event of our return to Chicago in March. Speaking of heavyweight champion Greg Hennig, he had been challenged by the team of the Hot Tags. Wolfie and Calder are looking for a measure of revenge for Calder's bum shoulder, and Hennig is willing to give him the shot. Taking Southern Justice Jack Griffith as his partner for the evening, Hennig is hoping that the experience can carry him and Griffith to victory. And in the main event of the evening, we will see Robbie McNamara and Jason O'Connor, collectively known as Bleed Green, taking on Eternal Cruiserweight Champion Acid and his new compatriot Silver Tiger in a tag team bout that can have far-reaching ramifications of the Eternal Cruiserweight division. In addition, you will see the debut of Tavon Blake Jr. in singles competition and other Eternal wrestlers in action. Tickets are on sale through our website and in person in Akron at the VFW Post. Doors open at 6 p.m., bell times at 7. We hope to see you there. And with that, we've come to the end of this week's Event Center. If you have any input or feedback, feel free to leave them wherever it is you catch our episodes. We look forward to hearing from you and may highlight your comments in future episodes. I have been your host, 240. This has been Pro Wrestling Eternal Event Center. Thank you for your time, and we hope to see you again soon.